Guess I'll use this one. Welcome to the September 1st, 2022 meeting of the ARB. Would you call the roll, please? Thank you.
Yes. Chair Hirsch,
Here.
Vice Chair Baltai,
Present.
Board Member Thompson absent, Board Member Chen present, Board Member Rosenberg present. We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. So there needs to be a resolution of a motion authorizing the use of teleconferencing for ARB during the COVID-19 state of emergency.
You have to do oral communications first.
Communications.
You have to go through the list on the agenda.
Okay.
You just did a roll call, right?
Oral communications. All right. So this is only my third time here. Let's keep trying. Let's go to oral communications. Are there any anybody who's speaking on items that are not on the agenda today? Medina.
Yeah, David, did we go through the instructions on,
Oh, no.
there's a short version.
So you got to read.
I have it right here. Pursuant to AB 361, this meeting will be held with the option to attend by teleconferencing or in person. Members of the public may provide live public comment by submitting a speaker card prior to the start of public comment on that item. Speakers may address items that are not on the agenda during the oral communications portion of the meeting. Spoken comments via a computer or smartphone will be accepted through the Zoom app. To address the board, go to zoom.us/join. Meeting ID is 96561891491. When you wish to speak, click on raised hand. Okay, that should do it. So, Medina, are there any?
I haven't received any speaker cards. There is no one in the room from the public. I see one attendee phone caller with last digits 387, but they have not raised their hand.
Hello, speaker. If you want to be speaking now, you have to raise your hand. No, I guess we'll just move ahead. So next is agenda changes, additions, deletions. Jody?
Yes, no changes at this time.
City official reports. Yeah, no, I got it. Yeah. City official reports.
Yes, so good morning. My name is Jody Gerhardt. I'm the manager of current planning. And so just the first thing we have for city official reports is just going over the schedule. We'll add that Board Member Thompson was absent today. And then if we go down further, we do have an ad hoc committee. I believe it's Board Member Baltai and Board Member Chen for the ad hoc committee. Also on the second page here, we have our next hearing, September 15th, will be a preliminary review for 824 San Antonio. And then after that, you see a list of pending projects. These are all projects that are likely to come before the Architecture Review Board sometime in the future. And so this is where you can sort of, if you want to do some early research, this would be the place to look. So thank you.
Yes, Jody, I'd like to talk about that list. Thank you very much for adding in the pre-screening items that are on the list now. I note a couple of them that are sort of, why are they there? For example, the Home Key project is listed, right?
I think I had maybe given a little bit of misinformation last hearing because I was out on vacation, so I wasn't remembering the full story.
Okay.
But Home Key did come to you when I was on vacation.
Right.
And given that it's a streamlined project, that will be the one and only hearing for Home Key.
Okay. so
But the
we can
city
s-
continues to work on it, and we're working to get that built as soon as possible.
Sure, absolutely. So we scrub that from the list at this point then. Huh? So on the SB 330 ones, those are really kind of critical ones for us to keep our eye on. Has SB, the first one on the list, 22 PLN 00057, has this gone through pre-screening?
So this is 3001 El Camino. You should see further in the list. Let's see.
It is, I think, yeah, on the second page.
Yeah, so you'll see that there's a major ARB also on file for that one. I'll have to take a look in the database to see if there's been other items. I don't trust my memory at this point.
Okay. Well, this is a work in progress, continuing to be, and I think it's going to be really, really important to us as we proceed. So, but I do have some maybe other questions. So actually on that one, it appears twice really then in the schedule here. So would you be trying to sort of put them all together as one for each so it doesn't get confusing to us?
Yes, for the 3001, I can combine those in future agendas.
Okay. So let's see how many of the talked about here. On 22 PLN down 1, 2, 3, 4 down on the list. Let me just have a general comment, let's have a place where we can say whether they're pre-screened yet or not. And also, it seems to me it would be useful to have to get to maybe the council hearing on which it was pre-screened, and if there are comments from the council, if we could have a connection to that, because that's a piece of information I think that'd be very useful if we are looking at some of these to sort of pre-analyze the program. Okay.
Yes, I can certainly, you'll see in the very first column, it says what type of process, this particular project is going through, but I hear, you're wanting to know sort of what came before that.
Yep.
And so I can put that on the right-hand side.
Right. It does say pre-screening, like in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th down, it says pre-screening. But it doesn't say whether it's expected to by a date, some.
I would rather not put dates because those
They change.
change all the time. I
Okay.
can put dates that have already happened.
Okay, so we could say expected or, or completed, or something like that.
I mean,
Put
the
a date.
prelims and the pre-screenings, are only supposed to take, 2-3 months.
Mhm.
So when you see those,
Mhm.
they're not going to take very long to get to a hearing.
So I had another little question on here. How early will an applicant actually declare that they will want to come before us or not voluntarily?
So if a applicant would like to file a preliminary review comes before the ARB,
Mhm.
we won't know until they've filed. I might know a week or two early because they have to make an appointment to file, but that's about it. And so, but once they're on file, then you will, see it in this list. And they'll still, we talked about with preliminary reviews, the code doesn't say exactly how long that process is supposed to take. So staff does have the option to do, sort of a 2-week version where we just bring it straight to the ARB with not much analysis. Or we have the option to do sort of a 2-month review of prelims where we're letting other departments, take a look at it and then bringing it to you with a more complete staff report. And I think we can, leave that up to the applicant, how they would like to do that.
And then if, let's suppose we we're looking to try to see these projects at an early date. You're saying leave it up to the applicant, but we discussed this previously, and we talked about in our executive meeting. And we talked about the possibility of just being the pre-schematic kind of view of projects, and they would include maybe one A, B, and C of your checklist. You remember that discussion?
Well, I mean, a preliminary review is an early set of drawings.
Yeah.
No matter what, if it takes 2 weeks or 2 months.
Uh-huh.
The difference with the 2 weeks and the 2 months is that if I take 2 months, I can get the other city departments to look at it, which can be very helpful for developers, that they get to hear not only from the ARB and the planning staff early, but they also get to hear from, Public Works, utilities, fire, those sorts of departments. They get to hear from them early as well. And so that's why I say it's really best left to the applicant on how quickly that preliminary review process goes. But I think what I'm hearing from, the chair and the vice chair is that we would like to highly encourage developers to go through the preliminary review process because this is when they are, just barely starting on their project. Plans are still schematic, they're still fluid. The ARB would like to be able to express to the developer maybe what are some major hiccups that could be avoided before they come in for a formal application.
Excellent. Sounds good to you, Peter. Yeah, sound very good, Jody. Thank you. So I guess going back down through the list, and now we should really move on. So there are a couple of projects that I would say are important for us to try to look at. Sort of put an X on. They're on the next page there. So on the final page there, the one that's at the very top, it is an important one for us to sort of get in on early. And the Creekside one, which is down 2 from that, is also obviously an important one for us to sort of look at early. So I just want to sort of emphasize that because I think that we should start this process as soon as we can. This is going to be a busy year, and I'm anxious to see that come up. So just to note those two, and then let's move on to the next item here. So are we into our first action item? Which is 250 Cambridge Avenue facade modifications. This is a request for architectural review of facade renovation of 3-story office building, including design enhancement exception to allow new light monitors on the roof. Zoning district CC2R, environmental assessment, exempt per guideline section 15301. For more information, contact, etc. So do we have the disclosures?
Hello, Chair. This is Amy French, Chief Planning Official. I think the first item of business is disclosures from the ARB members. Not all of the ARB members were here in March.
That's true. Okay.
I visited the site and I watched the previous meeting in March.
Oh, very good. Excellent.
Yes, I also visited the site yesterday. Thank you very much.
I visited the site as well, and I have watched the video from the previous board meeting.
I didn't visit the site, but I've been visiting it so many times now that I don't think I have to go back. So, when we do our disclosures, I keep thinking that really we should be disclosing that have we talked to anybody, but I gather that anybody talked to anybody who's representing the owner or the, okay, so none of that's happened.
Yes, Chair, that is correct. The main purpose for disclosures is to make sure if you have talked to anyone at the site or the developers or such, and really have you learned any information that maybe other board members don't have knowledge of. But I think incorporated, visiting the site into that as well.
Very good. Okay.
In that vein,
Just wanted to sort of.
Chair, I would like to disclose that I met with the applicant quite some time ago when they had an extremely preliminary version of this project. I was actually confused at the last meeting thinking they had presented it to the entire board. Embarrassingly so, they had not. However, that design has not been presented in any way, shape, or form, and hasn't influenced my thinking or doesn't reflect anything that's necessary for the public to see. Thank you.
So I can say ditto to all of what you just said, because I did also have a preliminary look at that scheme, and it's not what has been changed to be presented now. So we can proceed now. Is the applicant available?
Yes, we have, because we've had some consultant changes. My manager, the chief planning official, has graciously taken on this project, so she'll be giving the staff presentation.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
That's
I will share my screen now.
Whoops.
One second, Amy, it's showing up on the iPads, but it's not showing on the big screens. Do you have it on your iPads?
We do.
Okay. Am I sharing it properly?
I think everyone can see it on their iPads, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you. Good morning. As I noted, Chief Planning Official Amy French presenting for the 250 Cambridge project. The applicant is here today, has more slides for you than I will be showing. Just a bit of background. This was the slide that Sam, the prior planner, had showed in March of 2022, gives the overview of the site, the adjacent uses, the existing proposed, including the DEE, design enhancement exception that's requested for rooftop monitors that exceed the 35-foot height limit. And now there's a new proposal that has not been submitted formally regarding use of a rooftop terrace. It's a concept that would require a text change, so that will have to be a separate application that goes up to the Planning Commission and City Council. This gives the before and after and existing. So existing on top, March is what the ARB saw on the left, and now the design for you today, September. This shows the March proposal that the ARB reviewed and provided comments on, and what's proposed today. You'll see on the elevation, there's a ghosted rooftop structure there, and that again is subject to a separate application. It's not for consideration today. Again, this just shows what's proposed in today's meeting and then what is existing on the site. So basically, these were the comments that the ARB provided on March of 2022, and the applicant's responses. These are in the staff report starting on page 2. And so those were the things that they did, and they'll go over those with you. But they did address unifying the facade rather than 3 distinct massing elements. They addressed bike parking. They relocated those, and it's now at the front entrance. They did express the second floor slab. They did redesign the wall next to the parking lot to provide more daylight. And they have not changed the palette materials. They have not made operable windows or added shading devices. Those with a board of 3 in March, that was a minority of members seeking them to consider it. Consider it they did, and they can explain that. So as far as the Equitone product line, they can also show their slide on that regarding the color. So just for the new member that's considering this now, I have a couple slides, the planting and access. So hopefully you've seen those plans and get oriented to all of the landscaping. There's a little bit more detail on the landscaping, the trees, plant species, the planters, the seeding. access and parking. Again, these slides were shared in March, so hopefully the new member had reviewed these, the presentation. So it's here if you would like additional discussion on that. Also slides that I have on the zoning compliance and the design enhancement exception, which again requires findings separate from the AR findings. So there's slides on the DI when we get to that point to discuss those, and then the findings related to the comprehensive plan. And so staff feels that the project has been, these are materials, but I'll let the applicant present because they have slides on the materials. That concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Amy. We hear from the Heather Young.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'd also like to share screen. And let's get the presentation. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Get this up. And sorry about that. Some technical.
Heather, can I interrupt you for a second? First,
Yes, please.
Please say and spell your name. Spell it.
Thank you. I apologize. My name is Heather Young, spelled HeatherYoung, and I'm representing the owner applicant, Robert Wheatley Properties. And that's actually something I'd like to bring up briefly. Since we spoke with the board in March, there has been an ownership change to the property. And I believe Christian Hansen is here, and I'd like to introduce him and Robert Wheatley, and maybe they'd like to say a couple of words first.
Okay, well, you have 10 minutes to make your presentation.
Very brief, yes.
Sure. Well, thank you, ARB members and Chair and Vice Chair for being here. Just by brief introduction, Robert Wheatley and I have been partners for the last 15 years. We office within walking distance of Cal Ave. Robert has been here for about 38 years. So we're very familiar with California Avenue. We own and manage several buildings in the area. We fixed up a lot of buildings with in this vintage and older, and pride ourselves in kind of bringing new life to some of these buildings that need some attention. Just one quick thing to note is that we have talked to a lot of our tenants, and some retail, some office, and California Avenue is definitely in need of the office tenants to come back and patronize the restaurants during the day. We've had a lot of feedback that some of the coffee shops aren't open as much as they were, and our office tenants are saying that they're struggling to get their employees back to the office. And one of the things that's helping that is to add amenities to these to these buildings, outdoor spaces, or just to have it be a place that they really want to come visit. And by doing that, it'll populate our downtown and really hopefully keep a vibrant retail sector. So we hope this is our third ARB meeting. We know there's been changes, and we appreciate all the comments that have come in the previous meetings. We've done our best to really address all those comments. We feel like Heather's done a really great job trying to address all those, and we hope that this product is acceptable and that we can get to a quick decision so that we can get people in this office building and back downtown out to lunch and patronizing those retail shops. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Heather.
Thank you. And I believe you are familiar with the site and the location. You're familiar with the existing footprint. Amy touched briefly on the proposed revisions. Just as an orientation, the primary entrance to the building is here. The vehicular entrance is on the far right side. And again, the existing conditions and the new ownership has resulted in some changes that have been folded into these responses to the ARB comments in March. The first one was that there had been a recessed balcony over the building entrance, and the new ownership felt that the change of color from the primary body of the building, the paving demarcating the entrance, and the new signage were sufficient to demarcate the entry so that balcony is no longer proposed. And then at the garage entry, they felt that a third floor terrace was too prominent, that a second floor balcony was a more appropriate response. And so there is a modest balcony there that is over the garage entry. And the third thing, as Amy indicated, there is a concurrent application process for a rooftop terrace. And in the spirit of disclosure to the ARB, we didn't want to come forward with a proposal and then come back a couple of months later and say, oh, by the way, we've been thinking about this. We're just letting you know that this is happening, but it is a separate process. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you again for discussions on a proposed rooftop terrace for this particular property. If we look at the 7 comments that came from the ARB in March, the first was to try and unify the facade. In all of these slides, we're going to compare and contrast the March version versus today. The first comment was to look at reproportioning the windows as part of a facade unification. And we've broken up this large horizontal series and try to make, again, a more holistic set of proportions to windows and wall. We've also removed the step in the massing that occurred between the middle of the building and the garage entry component, so that this is a more unified planar facade. We've added a new column at the base of that garage entry, which not only serves to ground this end of the building, but provides a safer egress path of travel for people leaving this exit onto the public way. We've also removed the steel columns that were in the middle of the building and made the column cladding the same equitone material as the main facade of this portion of the building. They're also coplanar. And we did retain the steel column at the entry to associate with the steel beam and the entry signage, and the darker color, again, to help differentiate and to clarify the building entry. Building entry is a challenge for the property because the doors are so far recessed. So we were trying to add as many visual clues, including that outdoor seating area. The next slide shows how this is more unified. Again, the blue area was a plane of the wall, different from the green area and different from the column area. And now all of those are at the same wall plane. Again, trying to make the masses distinct from each other, but unified within themselves. And these are some additional views, the before and after, and the before and after. As far as a warmer palette of materials, there was a board member who did feel that the equitone was too cool. And we actually didn't agree with that, but there's a composite wood cladding, a warmish wood tone. There are 2 tones of equitone. One is a flat planar surface, this warm gray color. The other is a ribbed color, the light beige, which also has shadow lines in it. And we did go back and we looked at this very closely. There's a limited palette of colors available from this manufacturer. This is a solid color material, and the brown and the light beige were both selected from the warmer end, not the cooler end of the palette available. Next was to consider more operable windows. And I don't think I was very articulate, but the existing building rear facade is full of operable windows. The new design also has a opening sliding door system at this location. The tenants on the ground floor terrace can easily open their front doors. We do that at our office all the time, just to let air and light in. But we talked with the building mechanical engineer, and he strongly advised against having operable windows on the Cambridge facade, that it would be very disadvantageous to the new HVAC system and its balance. The next was to reconsider locating the bike parking away from the front doors. We had some concerns with this as well, but we were having some challenges in finding appropriate locations that the transportation department approved. I'm happy to say that we were able to make some adjustments, and we have two visitor bike parking. I'm hurrying as fast as I can, I'm sorry. So that's been addressed.
It's okay.
And the next one, this was one of yours, David, the flatness of the curtain wall. You had hoped that we could find ways to better articulate the second floor slab and the curtain wall itself. The glass plane has been moved back, and I apologize, this particular image did not do a good job showing the second floor plane, but it depending on the day, time, and the reflectivity, I think it will actually be very prominent and visible. And then the final one was to consider opening up this sidewall to bring more natural light to the entrance. We thought that was an excellent suggestion. And you can see here that that has been incorporated into the design. Thank you all very much. We appreciate your time and energy, and we're here if you have questions. And also want to thank the new board members. I know it's a heavy curve to come up to speed on all of these existing projects. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So now I guess we'll bring it back to our board members.
Questions?
Oh, yeah.
And public comment.
Yes, that's true. So do we have any public comment?
I have not received any speaker cards.
Okay.
And no one has raised their hand.
Okay, so then board members do you have any questions of the applicant? Go ahead, Kendall.
I would just thank you very much for the presentation. I just would like a little bit more clarification on this bike parking. From what I can see, there's two locations. So I'm on sheet A.10. And it looks on drawing number 2, it looks like there's 2 bike locations, one near the front entrance and one sort of near the garage. It looks like there's enough space for 2 bikes. Could you please clarify that a little bit?
Sure. So the city transportation department has very strict requirements on the amount of clearance. Each bike rack can support 2 bicycles. There's a very limited amount of space between the property line and the existing building and the concrete structure of the existing building. So we've got 2, 1 rack at one side, 1 at the other, which would provide 4 temporary parking spaces. 3 are required. The long-term spaces are provided in a brand new bike storage location that is in the basement associated with the building's underground parking. Perfect. And we didn't put that slide in the presentation, but if one of the board members happens to have the document package from March, it's a very nice below grade storage, and it's a fully locked enclosure with bike locker storage for the occupants.
Perfect, thank you. And we were able to see that from the presentation video.
Oh,
from
excellent.
last time, so that was in there. A question I have on that note is, how do they get the bikes from the upper level down to the garage? I would assume that they would use the elevator or ride.
Yeah, there's a great question. There's 2 ways. You can actually walk the bikes down the ramp. I don't recommend it, but because there is such a small number of parking spaces in the garage, it's a relatively safe process. There's great visibility. But when the building is open, the front doors are open. There's no key card to get in the front doors. And there's a brand new elevator just to the left of that main entry area. And you can easily go down. And then the bike locker storage is just around the corner from that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I have a few questions. The first one is, I didn't hear much comments about the roof monitor from last time. So, but this time I saw it's much smaller and much shorter. May I know the reason why?
Sure. So again, the roof terrace application is separate, but we did want to show what would be the impact to the roof monitors if the roof terrace was, as we hope, embraced by the city council and then also embraced by the ARB. And in that case, the roof terrace, the roof monitors would be smaller, but because they would still be a design enhancement exception, we wanted to make sure that they were part of the project application. They just may be less if the roof terrace moves forward as we hoped.
Thank you. And will those windows operable for the roof?
No, those are fixed vertical windows in the roof monitors.
I see. Another question is for the curtain wall between the first and second floor in the middle of the building. So from the last meeting, you mentioned it will be the painted aluminum backside.
Yes.
The metal panel. So is it still the same treatment there, or what's the paint color of the metal panel?
It should be the color of the mullion, but Mark Munoz, our project architect, is part of the call. And Mark, do you have the specific answer to that? We're not hearing you. Oh,
I'm not on phone.
Oh, he's not on the phone. Sorry. Do you have the specific answer to that?
The panel occurs behind the glass.
Correct.
And be the same color as the concrete. So
It's the,
it's
yeah. Sorry, technical challenge there. If you didn't hear that, the glass is there, and it's the same clear glasses into the office spaces above and below. And the metal panel is painted the same color as the concrete to further promote that effect of the slab that David was looking for in the previous meeting.
Okay, and for the recessed balcony on the second floor, is it also the wood cladding for the ceiling?
The old cladding from the ceiling?
Yeah, I saw you have the wood material at the entering vestibule, right? So I wanted to know for on the right for the balcony, what's the material you will use at the balcony on the wall?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. The wall returns would be the ribbed Equitone material, and the ceiling would be the Resista wood panels that are being used at the entry soffit.
Okay, thank you. That's all my question.
Thank you.
Peter.
Yes, good morning. I have two questions, one for the architect and one for staff. Heather Young, on the third floor, you have on the right-hand side of the building, 4 large window assemblies, each one with sort of a shadow box frame. And in the middle of each is a fairly wide, I guess you'd call it a mullion, or really just a piece of wall. They're on grid lines.
The grid lines probably don't show up so well. Yeah, that's the Resista panel, the wide, sorry, not the Resista, the Equitone ribbed panel, the wider pieces.
Right.
That's it's backs. It's let me try to get to
the question is, Heather, excuse me, the question is very simple though. Are those structural, or any reason that they're there aside from a desire to break up the spacing on the windows?
They're non-structural. We were really trying to break down the speed of that large glass opening in the middle zone. And we felt that this rhythm did help to differentiate it from that earlier design, but we also just like the proportions better.
Great. Thank you for that, answering that question. And then if I could ask planning official French, Amy, what will the process be for this proposed rooftop terrace? I just want to know what's coming ahead of us.
Yeah. So there's a request that would be filed for a pre-screening. So that is a process that requires an application that goes to the city council for them to weigh in. This is similar to what they did in the downtown with rooftop terraces. And so it would be a similar process to that. We would go with this text amendment. They would say yay or nay, and then the applicant could proceed with the ARB application.
But it would require a code text amendment, or is this some sort of use process?
It's a text amendment that would go after pre-screening, then it would come back and go to the Planning and Transportation Commission because it is a change to Title 18, and then go back to the council for the ordinance.
And would this change apply then to other properties in the area, or is this exclusively for this property? I'm confused how that works.
Well, I imagine that's going to be the request. I mean, the request is from the applicant for this property, but we're looking at a code that could apply more broadly. So we would consider it as available more broadly, and craft the wording that way after analysis, of course.
Okay, I'm asking, the council recently reviewed a similar situation where an applicant was asking for a code text amendment. And while they were favorably inclined for that property, it was a big ask to change it for the whole district. Is there not some other way to get this type of thing approved, say a design enhancement exception, or other ways to not get the code changed and still allow them a roof terrace? Is there an option to do something like that for the applicant?
I have not done the analysis. I picked this up just to bring it to the ARB, and the applicant hasn't submitted yet, but I know that there was a fair amount of discussion with the prior planner, and Jody might be able to weigh in on this, but there was prior discussion that did not include myself, so I haven't done any further analysis.
Okay, I don't want to put you on the spot. I appreciate your stepping in, but maybe Jody can help. I'm just trying to get a sense for what's coming up and how this might play out.
So I think design enhancements is normally reserved, for like corner towers where we want to punch up the roof a little bit and things of that nature. And they also, on this particular building, they're wanting to put some skylights in. And so, that's a design enhancement that's going to enhance the interior of the space and not really have a great impact on the neighbors. But when we're talking about a full roof deck on the entire roof, that's really something that needs a code change. And I see Heather's, maybe it's not the full roof, but it's a pretty significant change.
And Jody,
Thank you, Jody. With the chair's indulgence, can we hear from the applicant on this question?
thank you, Peter.
Dave, is that okay, David?
Yes, sir. Please.
Thank you both. Yes, just to clarify, and we're sort of all caught in some awkward conditions. When the project came to you guys in March, we were working with Samuel Gutierrez as our planner, and then Samuel left the city, and we had a new planner who was working with us on this particular issue. In fact, he had been reviewing our application for both the exterior facade and the roof terrace, the two separate applications. And then he unfortunately left the city. And so there is an application that has been submitted to the city, but it's a bit in limbo because of our planner challenges at the moment. But the roof terrace itself is proposed for I think it's about 2/5 of the roof area, all on the California Avenue side. As you know, you could have a roof terrace in the CC2 district. The challenge is that the height required for the protective railings, the 42 inches, the 2 stairs that are required to be full stairs that come up and are part of an egress system from the building, and the height of the elevator overrun required for accessibility to serve the roof terrace, those things would exceed the building height maximum. And so, yes, those are the things that we technically do need the design enhancement exception for. But we were advised, again, with the planner working with the city, that it needed to go through a text amendment. And we would love it to go through a design enhancement exception process. We think that would be much faster and much more a useful contribution to the city staff time. As you heard from from Christian Hansen, finding ways to make the buildings more attractive to tenants and office workers, to get them back into the buildings and get them back at the shops and the restaurants during the week is a big goal of the owners here.
Can I ask one more question, David, or do you want?
You have another?
Well, I just want to follow up on this because I heard two different things from the applicant and the staff. I just heard the applicant say that the roof deck itself would be allowed by code. The question was the height limit regarding the access to the thing, to the terrace, the elevators and stair shaft and the railing. I heard the staff tell me that that's not the case. Can we get some clarity on what the actual requirements are from the code? If it's possible. I understand you're not prepared for this, so if that's too much.
Yeah,
That's
it's
okay.
good.
I mean, I'll just say that in the plans on sheet A23, it also indicates a painted steel trellis frame. So not just railings, but there's a
Thank you.
trellis that is to cover and provide shade or something.
Some shade. Thank you, Amy. I neglected to mention the trellis element. We were basing the design on what had been approved for the CDC district for rooftop terraces, what was allowed above the building maximum height. And there are several fantastic examples of successful rooftop terraces in the CDC. Yes, it's not that you can't have a roof terrace. It's just all the other things that you need from a accessibility and a life safety and a comfort component. Those do exceed the height limit.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for this.
Yeah. I have a sort of a follow-up on that very point. Wouldn't it be better for you to come through us for approval of all of the rooftop? It also involves stairs that are going up and changes in elevations on the sidewall, I think. And wouldn't it be better for us, for you, in anything to the council, to have us already voice our opinion about this?
We had a similar thought, and we were advised that it should be completely separate, two different policies, two different applications, and that it should go through this text amendment approach. And again, the reason that we're showing it at all is because we didn't want to do a bait and switch to the ARB. You know, we also wanted to demonstrate in those elevations that it doesn't have a significant visual impact on the street level to the proposed facade design. So we were trying to have full disclosure, give you confidence that if the roof terrace was not successful, that it wouldn't have a negative impact on what was being heard and hopefully approved today. And then also, if you had some feedback, which you clearly do, we'd love to hear that.
Well, maybe we should get back to that issue at the end here, because I think we should listen to our board's opinions about the building itself, and then we'll come back to it.
Thank you.
Ms. Chen.
Okay, I'd like to thank you again for your application and presentation. I saw there are some big improvements compared to the last submittal, and also I have to say it's beautiful and it's clean, it's open air. And I do like the large glazing area. It makes more openings of this building and makes it more contemporary. And I do appreciate you open the corner of the entry to make it more open. But I have two comments. One is I would still strongly recommend it to think about the operable windows at the front. It's not necessary to open each of the glazing panel, but maybe just a few of them, say maybe those single panel windows, somehow it could be open. It will provide better user experience and better thermal comfort control. And also another comment is, although I do like the material you select, I think it's high quality, but color-wise, I'm not sure about the white color because considering the context of this location, there is not too much building surrounded this building. It's all parking lot around. And considering the white material and the large glazing area, I'm a little bit concerned about whether this building will be too bright to be on the street and also about the glare issues. So that's all my comments for now. Thank you.
Excellent.
Yes, again, thank you for the wonderful presentation and the presentation last time as well. They were both very clear, concise, and easy to follow with very clear design intent. And my comments are actually pretty limited. I have to agree with Board Member Balpe's comments from last episode, last board meeting that I'm watching on TV, that I felt that the original design was still good. Now, looking at the new design, I always love seeing these moments where you look at a design from day one and you go, it's a good design. And then it gets a little pushback and the architect goes and digs in and sort of refines it a little more. And you look at the new design and it's even better. So I sincerely commend you on the design here. I think that the color palette is actually quite attractive. I think that it's a clean facade. I like the breaking up of the windows. While I definitely agree with Board Member Chen that operable windows would be better. I always like natural ventilation and I always have concerns about fire escape, but it's clearly got the two stairwells at either end and there's some compliance in that regard. I don't think it's enough to prohibit this from moving forward. So understand the design intent that having these large glazed windows be inoperable makes sense. Now, if there was if there was an opportunity for something a little bit more ventilated or naturally ventilated on the sides or the rear facade, as you had mentioned that the existing rear facade windows do open, I think that's a benefit and I think that should be embraced. But I understand that the front facade maybe doesn't need and or want to have the operable windows. My one comment of caution would be that I also noticed that you've significantly reduced the amount of the wood material, the wood look material from the previous design to this one because of the reduction of the balconies. We don't have that wrap up and over anymore. And so we don't get that sort of warmth playing back in other than the small second balcony and the entranceway. At the entranceway, you also have a bench that's sort of the seating area right as you walk in. I would very strongly encourage that that remains a warm wood feature as well. It's shown in your landscape documents on L something, L 2.1. And I would strongly encourage that that wood material remains and is prominently noted there. If you look at the existing facade, they have some type of bench there. It matches the wall and it's not a successful design. So it's a small item, but I think it's an important item. Other than that, I commend you on this. I'm also going to limit my comments and not discuss the roof terraces. That is not what's on the table today. As far as the light monitors are concerned, I have zero issue with them. You cannot see them from the street. I think that's a very reasonable ask for the amount of height exception you're seeking. And beautiful job. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Heather, for this application. I felt I could make the findings on the previous application. I can still make the necessary findings for recommendation today. So I'm on board with my colleagues on that. The two questions that they've brought up are worth a quick mention. On the colors, whether the Equitone panels are too bright or not, I guess I'd say I'm in the middle, and I'm happy to leave that to the architect's discretion. It's certainly not so bright or not such a problem that I couldn't make the finding that it's a high quality design. If the architect would choose to take the advice of board member of us to think that maybe it's too bright, it might be worth considering. But I don't think that's a reason to not approve the project. On the operable windows, Heather, you're saying over and over you want to make the building attractive to tenants, to clients, and I can't imagine a client who doesn't want an operable window. You're talking with a lot of younger folk working in these tech companies, and a lot of them really appreciate natural, holistic things like fresh air. And to just close the building off so it's always air conditioned, even on a day like today, is kind of a shame. And I know the HVAC consultant is telling you that's the best way to balance the system, but we've built buildings with operable windows, 2 or 3 stories on the street for millennia. There's a way to do it. You know, there's a way to do it. So again, I don't think I can make the findings that without operable windows, the building doesn't meet our standards. So I'm feeling like we should just let it go through. But I think you owe it to yourself and your tenant, your client. You want to make this building really great for the community, put real windows in it that open. It's not a skyscraper or anything where you just can't do that. So on those 2 items, that's where I stand. I had sketched for myself the 3rd floor window. Again, I'll call them mullions, the wide pieces inside the shadow boxes. And I think that I'm just not buying the argument that they break up the windows in a positive way. I think it'd be better if they were just a consistent spacing of glass mullions. They're all the same size. Again, I just don't think it's a big enough item to really drill in on. But I'll point it out to my colleagues. It's on the 3rd floor on the right-hand side. There's 3 large shadow boxes around glazing openings. And then within that is a series of, must be 2-foot wide Equitone panels. I just think it'd be better if those weren't there at all. So that's just something to see if we get any traction on. Lastly, to the chair, I would like to discuss the rooftop terrace further, but I'd like to do that separately from this initial discussion, if that's okay. I have 1 or 2 comments about that. David, would that be okay to do that later, or should I say that now? That's
let's move forward.
Okay, so I'd like to just reserve my judgment or my statement on that until a little bit later in this process. But those are my comments about the building itself. Thank you.
Well, yes, I want to thank you, Heather, for the presentation. And clearly, you've caught us all in a very positive way on the way you've improved the project, and happy to see that, when we get unified in our opinions about things. And the comments that seem to be resonating here are that operable windows, that's maybe the prime item that we're concerned about. I have to say I do agree with the idea of operable windows, and I've been making a point of it in some other projects as well as we've been examining them, and thinking about what I always call the wonderful air of Palo Alto here. It's so nice to have that capability. I understand that, there's also a sort of a planning issue of who's next to the window wall from the inside out. I don't know how that furniture layout actually works, but I still think it's a possibility. And in terms of what it does to the facade, if it's properly done, the mullions don't have to look too big, and they could maybe, I'll let you figure out where they should be to break up the volume, but I think it would be really nice to have operable windows. The comment about a little bit less wood in the design, I think you've really done a spectacular job of relating materials here, and the feeling of the building has just increased tremendously. We talked a bit about those details which you've added in, and thank you very much for that, because I think it's also impressive that the window wall is broken up with recesses. I really, really love the proportions of the building. I think it's an incredibly good job, and the building has a wonderful feeling. Now it has a sort of a head and a body to it, and the proportions of everything really work out well. In terms of, yes, the bench really ought to be a follow through of that wood material if you can, it's important to do that. And then finally, Peter's comment about breaking up the windows. I really like the way it's broken up, but I wonder if maybe the tone of the material in between there could be a little bit toned down so it isn't exactly the same. Am I correct in saying that it's the same white equitone? Yeah, okay.
It is, yes.
Maybe it oughtn't. I mean, maybe you could look at that a bit more, just because it isn't maybe necessary that is exactly the same. If there is, I know you have to deal with materials that are available and colors that are available in the equitone selection, but it seems to me that if it were toned down a bit, it would still look like an entire surround, but that the part in the middle would, and the proportions of the windows, which is what you've really done with these frames, is excellent, in my mind. So I wouldn't want you to lose that, but the thought of maybe toning it down in some way, if it's possible, just so that it doesn't look exactly like the other surfaces on the outside, which are brighter. And in terms of Mr. Chen's comment about the whiteness, part of the problem with the material is that it isn't showing its shadow when the sun shines on it, so it's as a texture, I think it might work really well. So I'm not going to come out too negative on that one, because I think it's up to you to decide, is it too bright or not? But the shadow is an important aspect to the front of that building. I think the bicycle racks are just perfect. The entry is wonderful. The opening on the side of the parking lot. I had one comment about that is I hope maybe you can have the plants grow up a little higher in that area so that they don't have to look at some ugly vehicle through that opening, which is just wonderfully proportioned at this point and relates so well to the front of the building. And then that's really where everybody stood on this. I think there are very minor areas here that really are questionable in any way, because it's a beautiful building now and the proportions are just terrific, and really anxious to see it built. And I think it's a standout the way it's done. And, thinking back to your first idea way back when, this is just excellent the way it's done.
Thank you very much.
So, and I really appreciate all of every little thought that's gone into it, like that recess at the exit is really a good thought, people coming out of the building instead of just immediately kind of meeting the flow of the sidewalk. There's a little kind of area there to recess. The bicycle room, which I remember is my favorite drawing in the picture, actually, of your drawings, whoever did that, it's really, really nicely done. And that's, the whole idea of making it that friendly for bicyclists will just be terrific for the whole neighborhood here. I think we should get back to the rooftop. I really feel that it's an important aspect that's going to really make this building additionally useful to everybody that is working there, and that it's a great improvement here. So if we could come out in some way in favor of that.
Pardon me, could we get a motion on the exterior first?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Who would like to do that?
David, I would prefer to make our comments complete before we make a motion. Once we speak after the motion, we're speaking beyond our project. I think my comments regarding the roof deck will affect the rest of the project.
Oh,
Give us some space, Heather.
Sorry.
We'll get you there, Heather. We'll get you there.
No worries.
Can I address the rooftop, David, for a second?
Sure, let's just talk about it.
Yeah, I'm just,
It's not a motion.
I understand it's not in the motion, but it's
Right.
clearly in the package, and I very much appreciate the applicant's desire to show us what they really want so we can move forward on this. And what's bothering me is that I think the council is not likely to give them a code amendment for this. The council is very reluctant to make sweeping changes for a given project. And as much as this project, I think, would be well benefited by a rooftop deck of some kind, just going to the council saying, make it proper for everybody is a real tough sell. And I wish that the staff could try harder to find a way to make some of these things work. So let me say why I think this is good. These applicants are not tearing this building down and putting something new in its stead. They're trying to remain part of the community. They're local developers and landlords who want to try to provide the kind of small scale commercial spaces we need. And when they come to us saying that it's so important to vitalize and make these attractive to their tenants, we need to listen to that. And putting rooftop amenities is one way they can do that without tearing the building down. And it just seems to me the shame that we can't really get behind that effort and find a way to make it happen. There was a way to do it with a trellis that wasn't such a permanent structure, then look for other elements in the code that allow it to be legal without having to get a code amendment. We're doing a big service to everybody. So I think it's a shame that we're not trying harder to find a way to actually make this happen. I'm very skeptical that what we're doing is going to result in success here. I'd like to say that, as this applicant can tell you, when the rooftop terraces start to impact the privacy of residents nearby, I get very concerned. In this case, we're looking at Cambridge Avenue, the supermarket parking lot across the street, places that really need to be activated, that need more eyes on the street. This stretch of Cambridge Avenue, this building is huge. And the more we can do to get this kind of visual activity, the better we are. The real issue is on the backside. There's potential impact on the residents. And I think we need to be very careful to just avoid or minimize or just not have any impact on them. But once we've mitigated that residential impact, we should be pushing for these type of rooftop gardens as much as possible. It really is a positive thing. So if we need to get the ARB to weigh in on that to council, that might be really beneficial. If we could all come to some clear statements like that, I think that helps to be on a consensus of all this. So again, I think the roof garden is good. We have to be careful about privacy issues. And I think we should try to find a way to get this to actually happen. Thanks, David.
Well, I'd like to see it part of our motion, if it's possible.
But can I make one more comment about the materials? David just brought up a good point, like the material is the ribbed material. It creates the shadow to make the material maybe looks not that bright. But just look at the sheet 8.18, the elevation. So the existing building, the color is more like yellowish, brownish. But considering the south-facing elevation, just look at the bright sunshine on the building, and it makes the building much lighter compared to what the actual color it is. So I would still suggest to rethink about if it will be too bright to just use the white color instead of change the tone to be maybe a little bit, just down tone a little bit. But again, I think it's not something that we should not approve this project. I'm in support of approval of this project today.
So Heather, what are the possibilities of this when you order Equitone? How much flexibility do you have to? This is a lot of material that you're using on the front. So is it possible to work with the Equitone people and get a variation, or do you have to use their chart?
Only other options.
Mark has just walked in to hand me the other existing options, and I'm gonna bring these as close as I can to the camera.
We can see.
They're very limited in their existing color palette, as you can see. Getting them to do a custom run for this project, I know it may feel like there's a lot of material, but it's actually in the scope of their international production, not so much.
Mhm.
I don't believe we've reached out to them to ask what the cost of that would be. My gut is that it would be prohibitive. And a board member, Chen, I do want to let you know that we've done a lot of studies, and we also were concerned about the brightness. And that's one of the reasons this actually shows a little bit better. This is the brown color, but because of the ribbing and because it's horizontal, the color and the darkness and lightness of the facade is going to completely change over the course of a day, over the course of a year. And we did a number of, put the sample up, walk 50 feet away, walk around at different times of day. And we actually felt like, because it is an animated material with the shadows, that was part of the joy of the building. Sometimes it would be a little too bright. Sometimes it would be a little too dark and shadowy, that the building had a life to it because of that texture. And when we tried to replicate that impact with the darker material that was available, it went really dark, really fast, and it lost that crisp modernity that we were really searching for. I want to assure you that we take this really seriously and have looked into it. But at this time, the two colors that you've seen, the sort of light brown for the entry component, and then the ribbed white that has all the shadows, that's our recommendation right now. I know that's disappointing. Is the material boards? Oh, good. Peter's got the material board. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's at the window.
I do want to also respectfully disagree with my board members here. I do think the white, it's an appropriate shade of white. I think that it's not super bright. I think we're seeing a lot of white buildings. And I also think that the proportions of the building, it is very broken up by these glass facades. So for me personally, I think you see more of a glaring white wall of this dinky little dominoes right next door than you're going to see of any stretch of this. I completely agree with the shadow element of it, that it's going to change over the course of the day. So in my mind, and again, with all due respect, I really think that it's an appropriate white, and I can see the issue with darkening it. Now, in my mind, I also thought you could, in theory, flip-flop the two colors so that the dark covered the vast stretch and the white was at the entry. However, that darker color is a very flat color, right? Whereas the white really does have this texture and the shade and shadow to it. So I wouldn't recommend that. It was just a passing thought that that's a possibility, but I think that this is a more successful design. So I can understand the concerns, and we've had many conversations on white facades for other projects before, which is why this is such a sort of hot button topic. But I also, hate to put it this way, but there's a trend right now that white is the in color, and it's clean and it's modern and it's bright and it's inviting. So I'm not one to fight against that too hard, but I can understand the concerns that it might be white. My only comment would be that because it's broken up so much by these glazing elements and that it's got the texture, I'm on board.
Okay. I happen to agree with that personally as well, the comments that have been made. I think it's important to think about the color, but in this case, that contrast is going to be quite exciting here, and the shadows will make the difference. So, okay, so let's have a motion.
Do we want to circle back to the trellis for a moment here? Because there's a part of me that's very hesitant to speak on it too hard. We don't have a formal application. We don't have a formal design here. We're getting shown things that I sincerely appreciate the proactiveness on behalf of the architect to try and make sure that we are informed as to what the design intent is as a whole. Now, I would feel comfortable commenting for what we can see, but I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable making a motion with the trellis to approve or disapprove. I don't even know if we could.
And if I may, you're talking about the roof trellis?
Yes.
Yes. So I really think from staff's perspective, we would greatly appreciate a motion on the building itself. If you want to make a separate motion or a straw poll, something of that nature that talks about the roof deck, I think that should be done separately. Thank you.
Yes, I don't see any problem with that, that it's just a separate comment, but it shows intent.
Yeah,
And
in terms
it's
of,
important, and I think for us to put that out there at this point, somebody reads our motion and then sees that we have an intent, even if it's slightly separate, but close enough so that they can read it. So I'm looking for a motion.
So I'd like to move that we recommend approval of this project per the staff report.
a second.
Vote, please.
Ying Chi, do you want to make an amendment to that?
Yeah, shall we add the operable windows to rethink about the operable windows
Ah.
at the front?
I think you should try to make that motion and see if it, make that amendment and see if it passes.
Okay, so,
Friendly amendment.
If you'd like to offer a friendly amendment.
okay, yeah, friendly amendment to approval this project with consideration of adding operable windows on the front facade.
No, I'm sorry. I think you should, that's not a friendly amendment. I'd like to see a straw poll of the board to see whether we do that. So I suggest you offer it as an unfriendly amendment. And then the chair will take a vote on it. No, I just want to be very clear. I think it's going beyond our scope in our findings. I support the idea of it, but to require it is something.
Well, excuse me, but she said to study it, right?
What was the language you were using?
Suggest to
Suggest,
think about
consider.
I can,
to consider operable windows on the front facade.
that I can accept. To consider operable ones. I don't want to make it mandatory. Is that your intent?
Yeah.
Then I can accept that amendment.
I would agree with that as well.
What's with it?
Yeah, well, there are only 4 of us here, so
So that's been accepted.
yes.
So-
I think it's okay to put it in that way.
So staff would
And I
ask
think
that we
if I
consider that.
see Heather sort of nodding, she's going to talk to the mechanical people about it. And
We'll talk to the mechanical consultants, we'll talk to the owner, and we'll see if we can find a way to, we'll see what we can do. We'll look at it.
okay, so then we don't have to put it in? No, we will. We'll put it in as just your wording.
Yes, so again, I moved that we recommend approval per the staff report with the accepted amendment that the applicant consider the use of operable windows on the front facade.
And I have repeated my second.
So that's the moved and
Okay.
seconded.
Okay, let's take a vote on that.
Vice Chair Baltai,
Yes,
Board Member Chen,
Yes,
Chair Hirsch,
Yes,
Board Member Rosenberg.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
so let's just add, who would like to word that one? We want to add our recommendation that the rooftop deck is considered.
well, I think, David, if we all just express an opinion, that goes on the record. There is nothing to move on or make a statement about. Jody and Amy, Amy would like to say something, David.
I would. I just wasn't sure if I heard the design enhancement exception findings clearly stated in the motion and vote. That would be much appreciated.
Per the staff report, Amy, is that
Yes.
the way you stated it in the staff report is fine?
Okay. I just want to make sure that that was included as part of this specifically, because we're talking architecture review approval and then this DEE.
The
as well.
DEE was also approved, yes.
Okay, thank you.
To be approved.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that sort of winds us up. Heather, excellent. Look forward to this. Nice, really nicely done, improved significantly from where we started. And thank you for that, for all the effort that you've gone into it in the detail.
Excuse me.
Thanks to all of you and staff.
David, Jody Gerhardt would like to add something.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to make sure, did the ARB want to voice their opinion on roof decks in general? That would probably be helpful information for the council.
I think we should.
So I made a statement a few minutes ago. My opinion is that the rest of us ought to make a similar statement or state how you feel about this issue. But that's not for me to make you do it, and there's nothing to vote on, I don't think.
Go ahead. let's do. It's a little funny.
Another option would be to agendize some sort of, on the next ARB agenda, a general discussion about rooftop terraces for office buildings in Palo Alto. I mean, building off of what happened downtown, there could be a general discussion about that. And looking at citywide or something.
Yeah, I think that that's a good thought. I would love to have that conversation at some point. For this moment in time, again, I'm trying to keep my focus sort of on this project, but I love a rooftop terrace. So they're, quite a nice element to have. Now for this project specifically, I'll just make a few comments if the board will indulge me, just to put this out there. And Heather, I sincerely appreciate your design efforts. And I would like to reiterate, I really appreciate that you put this design forward at this time so that we have a moment to think about it and consider it. And then when it does come back before us formally, we'll actually have had time to process and sort of let those thoughts percolate through. I think rooftop terraces are excellent. I think that's a nice way to sort of get fresh air, a space for gathering that you might not otherwise have. Roofs can notoriously be quite ugly and covered in mechanical elements, things like that. I would encourage the consideration of solar panels, whether or not that's going to be incorporated in any regard on this rooftop terrace. I would encourage the attention to neighbors and how far back your setbacks are for railings, things like that. I think any rooftop terrace that comes right to the edge of the roof is potentially problematic. So just a simple sort of pull back from the edges to make sure that that boundary is really respected and that the visual sight lines are as minimally impacted as possible. On this project specifically, I would completely agree with what Peter had said, Board Member Balte had said, because it's an existing building. Now, if this was coming to us as a new building and a new design, that's a different thing. And we've got strict height limits on that. You guys are trying to actively enhance an existing building. And I think an exception or a variance should be strongly considered because it's an existing building. And we're trying to maintain and best utilize the existing structure. We're not asking to build above the height limits with a new building. We're asking him to allow for an exception or a DEE on something that's existing because of the existing conditions. So I don't think that this is an applicable thing that would suddenly wash over all of Palo Alto. That being said, I do think that I went back and forth on the trellis idea because the trellises will make it taller, right? Quite significantly so, and visually impact the height. Now, on the other hand, the thought of umbrellas up there and somebody forgets to put them away and then it blows off the roof in the wind is very problematic. So in my mind, something that's a shade structure that's more permanent makes sense. Now, again, when you cycle back and present this formally, we'd love to better understand what those shade structures are, where they are, the visual impacts, and obviously materiality. So that would be my comments on this, and thank you for your time and attention.
Just to add a little bit to this, it is certainly premature for us to consider it as a completed piece. It isn't designed yet. I mean, it hasn't been presented to us. Well, you're nodding, but it isn't a complete picture yet as to what it's going to be. I'm not saying in any way that I don't want it to happen, but we're looking at something that is still a preliminary idea here, I think.
We actually have documentation that directly responds to the comments from Board Member Balte and Rosenberg about visibility from the neighbors, setbacks from the perimeter, quality of materials. And it was, again, really unfortunate. It got lost in this planning person resignation. And we have it all. We'd love to do a study session with you guys on this. We would absolutely love that. It's not in front of you, obviously. It's a separate application, but.
So I think, Chair, we've closed the public participation portion, but if we want the board members to continue.
Okay, these are just board member comments at this point. And then, do you want to
Well, not too much at this moment, but maybe just consider about the privacy of the neighbors, especially if it is near the residential area.
Okay, well, I think that that sort of sums it up. Really, we're really kind of said it all, I think. And once again, it's a complete package. Thanks, Heather, for this. And let's move on. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you all.
Is microphone?
Bylaw changes and council handbook. Let's open discussion between us.
Get a staff report.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Is there a staff report on this, Jody? Is there?
Yes, so I haven't prepared a PowerPoint necessarily, but I do have the staff report that I can show if I can figure this out. Sorry. Here we go. Share screen. I was on the minimized view. Okay. All right, here we are. So on starting on packet page 51, you'll see that we've had some previous discussions about, you know, bylaws and the municipal code and things of that nature at previous retreats. And so this is just trying to button up some of those subjects. For related to term limits, the clerk's office has helped us clean up that issue. So you do now see in the handbook, let me go to the next page here. It talks about, you know, the board is comprised of 5 members, 3 of whom need to be architects or similar. It is a 3-year term and it commences on April 1st. The code, the municipal code has now been updated to reflect those same dates so that March 31st would be the last date of the term and April 1st would be the first date of the term. And that's true for all of your current terms. We have that up on the ARB website showing the end of everyone's term. So I think we're good there. Also, lastly, the handbook has been updated to show that unlike the Planning Commission or the Stormwater Oversight Committee that can only serve 2 terms, the ARB and other boards are able to serve 3 consecutive terms. So 3 times 3 years could be a maximum of 9 years, and even a little bit more as you read further into that paragraph. So, but I think that issue is all clean now. The item that I would like to talk about today is the timing of the chair and the vice chair elections. The bylaws, let's see, yes, the ARB bylaws as they're currently written, which are out of date, or maybe we could say they're okay, but that's the discussion. The bylaws currently say that the chair and the vice chair would be elected the first meeting in October. When this was written, new members started in November. So when this was written, the idea was that the chair would be voted in before new members start. We don't have to go that same direction. That's how it was in the past. So if I go back to, the latest chair and vice chair started their terms in July of this year, just so you have that point. But again, this is sort of up for grabs, what we feel like we as a full board would like to do when we'd like to have the chair and the vice chair in place new each year. And so maybe we can have that discussion. And then the last part would be the annual report. You'll see that in the municipal code, there is a call for an annual report, not less than once a year, to the Planning Commission and Council. And the purpose is to communicate the concerns of the board with respect to plans and policies. So if a policy was hindering a project, we could put that in a report and let council know that maybe that needs to be changed. That's a little bit different than the annual work plan that was recently put in place as part of the handbook. The version in the handbook is more of a look forward. What's our work plan? What should we be doing in the year coming? Staff would suggest, though, that we could do a look back and a look forward in one document. I think that would be helpful for everyone to just do that all in one fell swoop, which means that would be done in the spring sometime before council, because council ultimately wants to see the work plan before they leave in June. So those are the 3 topics, one pretty much settled already, and would love some discussion about the 2 other topics.
I doubt there is, but is there any public comment about that?
Okay. I haven't received any speaker cards. I see 2 attendees in Zoom, but they have not raised their hand.
And we'll bring it back for comments. Yeah. Do you have any comments on this? No, at this point?
Want me to start, David?
Yeah, I think Peter, yeah.
Okay, so well, we talked about this at length, I believe, at our retreat meeting a few months past. But I'll take the format Jody has provided us and say that the first item under the changes would be the term start dates, and that all seems straightforward, so there's not much to discuss. The second one is regarding the timing of the chair and the vice chair elections. As I recall, we had decided that we wanted the timing, these elections, to be out of sync with appointments of new members in an effort to not have a political sensibility about council thinking they could affect who gets to be chair by appointing new members. I've given some thought to that, though, because one concern I have is that if you appoint a chair out of sync with new members, then it's potential that a chair could also be up for reappointed. And if not reappointed, the council has taken away the chair. And so I'm starting to think that maybe the best thing is to have the new board, the first item the new board does is elect a chair and vice chair officers. That's the way city council does it. First meeting in January with the new council, they pick their council members, their mayor and vice mayor. And maybe we shouldn't worry too much about political machinations. This is Palo Alto. It's pretty small scale. I don't think that really exists. And it might just be a lot more practical to say that the ARB selects officers, chair and vice chair, as the first item of business with the new board. That would be the first meeting after April 1st. So that's my opinion on that right now. I could be persuaded either way. And I know we just did this in July based on our discussion at the retreat. I do think we need to be clear and put it in the bylaws what our practice is going to be, so it gets followed. For as long as I can remember, it's been a little bit vague because the bylaws from 1973 are still what's in the rules, but doing this in October just doesn't make any sense. The other item Jody was bringing up is regarding the annual report and the work plan. And I can give you some background on that. That when I first came on the board, none of this existed. There was no annual report. What staff said when we sort of questioned it was that we used to have an annual meeting with the city council. We would meet with them and it would be an opportunity for them to talk with us about things they want to do. This came to my attention when one member of the planning commission cornered me at a city function and they said, you guys are negligent in providing this report to us because we're supposed to send a report to the planning commission and the council. And he was correct. So this was when Wynn Firth was chair, and she's very proper. She was an attorney. So we drafted an annual report, and it was something that gained some traction. We actually, the second or third time around, managed to insist that the council have it presented to them in a joint meeting, and it was, I believe, quite successful. We made a bunch of strong points, and one of them, for example, was the need for San Antonio Road to have a design guidelines. Pretty clear now that was prescient advice. So I think we do have something to say along those lines. I think there's two elements to what Jody was saying on this, though. One is whether we try to combine the required work plan with an annual report. They're sort of different things, but for our uses, we might be able to combine them. And then how the timing and the structure of that goes. So I'll just put out, my opinion is that, yes, we should just do one report, not two. We're not out to make more work for ourselves or staff, and anything we do takes Jody's time away from other important things. I think we could easily combine our report with a work plan. I think so doubly because our work plan is, for the most part, doing these reviewing projects. It's not a whole lot to do. We're not really actively presenting policy issues we want the council to forward on. So we can do some of that, but we're less than other commissions, just by our very nature. Whereas our look back, saying this is what we've seen this year. We've seen a lot of development coming in on San Antonio Road, and there's no codes on what to do there. That's great advice. They need to hear that kind of thing. So my feeling is that the outgoing chair at the end of their term, so this will be coming up on March 31st perhaps, should be the one driving this report and work plan. They should take the lead on getting it together, getting staff resources, getting the board to cooperate, and getting it voted on and finished by the end of their term. The new chair then takes that responsibility on for the chair. This is essentially a summary of that chair's period as the chair. And I think we should memorialize that in the bylaws. That's the process. My experience again was that if you don't have it really clearly spelled out, it just gets forgotten. So to summarize these long statements I've just made, I think we should have new chair elections. First item of the meeting with new board members in April. And I think the annual report and the work plan should be combined and should be a focused effort by the outgoing chair at the end of March that is due. So that's a summary for everybody. Thank you.
Does anybody have comments on that?
I think I just am in wholehearted agreement. I originally thought that the elections ahead of time were sort of beneficial. And on that note, I would say that I would be very surprised if the ARB voted a person to serve as chair and then Sydney Council didn't reelect them. Again, this would be a little bit unusual. So I guess that's not a concern of mine. However, I do like the democratic element of everyone's at the table, everyone gets a vote. And so as soon as the board is elected, you know who's who. I agree. I think that it's a good idea to just have that be the first order of business with any new board. I also agree that the work plan and the look back summary, all of that can be the codes, the report can all be in one report. Again, I think that we don't have a ton of outside elements, and I'm going to literally start keeping a list of these ongoing things that we keep seeing. And my first item is rooftop terraces, but really I don't think that we have the extensive list the way that some of the other boards do. We're pretty specialized. We're pretty focused. So I think that combining that to one report would be easier for everybody. So I'm in agreement with everything Board Member Balde said. Thank you.
Do you want to? No. Yes, I'm in agreement with that schedule. I see no issue. Just concerned about how we express our content here, in that that's a schedule issue. How do we determine the content as to what we're going to provide in that report? To kind of leave it up to the chairman to do that, or to myself here, by itself isn't going to be. I think that what will have to happen, maybe there'll have to be a kind of an outline of what it's going to include, and then we would get comments from all board members and expand it. Could you direct some attention to that?
Jody, could you read for us it's in the municipal code, isn't it? The requirement for the annual report. What is the text there? How do they phrase what we're supposed to write?
So the ARB's annual report is in the municipal code, and it talks about the purpose is for communicating the concerns of the board with respect to the city's plans, policies, ordinances, and procedures as these affect projects that the board reviews. So, but I think what David is asking, I mean, David, this is not something that you have to do solely by yourself. I think, Board Member Baltic can probably explain that previous chairs have sort of built an outline, brought it to the board sort of, added their 2 cents. The chair then added some meat to it, and then the chair brought that back to the board to vote on, saying that, this is the annual report. So you can talk to the board as you're writing that document.
It needs to be agendized by the chair well in advance of that deadline. And at a group meeting, the chair, in my opinion, should just solicit the board for opinions of what's the items we should discuss. And we can have various votes or discussions over what are the list of topics. Clearly, it has to be done so that ultimately the board has to, as a whole, and ideally unanimously, support this. So I'm just saying that the chair has to be the one who drives it. And they have to put this on the agenda well in advance so we can get there. The past couple of times we've done this, it's actually taken quite a bit of discussion to decide which items we really wanted to have out there. At first, you have an enormous list, and the chair is wise to try to get that focused so council actually listens to us. But I'm just advocating that the chair be the bureaucratic driver of this. We can't expect the staff to do this for us. And by putting it in the bylaws that it's the chair's responsibility to ensure that it gets done, just puts that much more onus clearly so staff can see it, the public can see it. It's a responsibility of the chairperson. It might be necessary, I think it is necessary for the staff, our staff, to draft something that would be a text change to our bylaws, which would essentially incorporate the requirement from the municipal code, but then also just make it clear that this report should include not only that information, but also our annual work plan, which is described in the boards and commissions handbook. So somehow codify all that along with the other things we've been saying. So I would expect to have that come back to us for a final vote. To the chair also, I would greatly appreciate allowing Board Member Thompson a chance to chime in on this next time when it comes back to us. So that's my opinion again, that we just right now, what we should really do is just direct staff to revise the bylaws per our comments. Jody, does that sound like a good process?
Yes, we will definitely need to come back with likely bylaw changes, but yeah, any changes we would come back with, track changes so you can see where we're adding and deleting, and then have a formal vote on that. So today is more just direction to staff.
Okay, I mean, I think that takes care of that. Peter, we wanted to add to this discussion something about what we developed in our meeting that we had.
May I speak to that, David?
Yeah, please.
So board members Chen and Rosenberg, we have a pre-meeting for the chair and the vice chair in advance of the general meeting. The purpose is to just review what projects we're looking at for this meeting. For example, at this meeting, I looked at the drawings for the Cambridge building from Heather Young Architects and asked the staff to be sure to show a before and after design images very clearly for us. I thought that would be very useful for us as a board. The purpose is not to pass judgment of any way, but just to bureaucratically look at it. There's nothing anywhere in any document or statement about how the board operates that explains that this meeting takes place or describes what happens or how it works. Again, I'm just going back on my experience when I started on the board. I just didn't even know this existed. And I was very surprised when I was first, it's not the first time I've been vice chair. The first time I was, they said, oh, now you have another meeting to go to. And it felt sort of secret. Like, oh, you're special, you get to do this. I like Jody, it's fun to meet with her, so I do feel special. But it seems to me that we ought to put that in the bylaws, that this meeting shall take place. This is the purpose of the meeting, just to memorialize again what we do. So that's one comment. What David is referring to perhaps is slightly different, that David and I have been advocating fairly strongly, and I think obviously, for the Architecture Review Board to have a greater forward look on projects as they come into the planning department. In other words, to get some sort of input on the design or feedback to the applicants well before the project is deemed complete and presented to us in a formal way. We've talked about it several times, and it's actually quite tricky. We don't want to trigger this to count as another formal review. We have to be careful if an applicant doesn't want to do this. Staff's time isn't free. We can't just go burning up the clock with them. There's all kinds of issues. We also don't want to burden the review process. The goal is to make this go smoothly. And so David and I have all kinds of ideas we've been pushing, but I think it's important to get the board as a whole behind something. But my comment on this is that perhaps we could put into the bylaws again some sort of a process whereby, well, here I'll go out on a landing on this, but whereby staff is presenting on a regular basis a list of projects coming in, and board members should look at those projects and make themselves aware of what's going on. And then if they feel they have comments, we should have a chance at every meeting for them to just make a statement about it. I think that's innocuous enough that there's no problem with that. It's an individual thing, although the council and the attorneys may have a different opinion on it. But the bigger question for us as a board is, do we even want to go there? I know board member Thompson has been fairly strong in not doing this kind of thing. At least that's been my take on it. And my discussions with David are that we really need to get a collective sense from the board what we might want to do, but that this is possibly something we would put into a bylaw change. So right now, through the chair's indulgence, I would like to see if we have a discussion about this. Again, staff will probably tell us we're already beyond our bounds what we should be discussing. It's not in the staff report. So I don't want to go beyond what Jody says we should be doing, but this is something that's important to me.
Can I sort of add to this?
Just want to clarify whether, I think I always feel it's always good to have some pre-screening like that, especially through the site planning phase. But I want to know, clarify if it's something you suggest to be required, or it just offer them the opportunity to go through this process. And also another thing is, you said maybe the staff could prepare something and inform the board members there is some projects for us to review. So what kind of format of the documentation that will be provided? Is it just the digital copies or hard copies, or what's the thought behind that?
Can I break in for a second here? This is really why I'd asked Jody, and she's been terrific at putting it together, the list of projects that we're about to see. So, and that, we're going to refine that list as we move forward. So it includes all the information like the council's screening of what their intentions were in their screening meeting. So we'll have a picture from that, and we can look at that, and we have that list right here. And from that, that was really the sort of the first step to do this. The other step is that there are the rules and regulations that the applicant gets as to what they are to submit. And there's the preliminary submission is a series of items that are required, and they aren't too extensive. So in that list, we could look at that list and we make a decision that this is what ought to be included in a packet that's going to be coming to planning in any case, coming to us in an organized way in the beginning of a project so that we could look at it. And Jody has suggested that maybe an ad hoc committee could explore these pieces and report back to us as a total board. I mean, that's easy enough, I think, to accomplish. And there's a little question as to how that happens.
My face is crinkling. I don't know that I suggested an ad hoc committee, but related to pending projects, I think you're seeing, I'm working with the chair and the vice chair. You're seeing the list of pending projects as part of the city official report. I'm happy to make the changes that the chair asked for this morning about, what previous hearings have happened on a given address. And I'll make sure and sort of combined, the address into one line. So you can see that. Staff is happy to continue that practice. And that allows you also see in the city official report, there's a link to the webpage, where you can find the plan sets and things of that nature so that you can do your own early review. I don't know that staff can do much more than that, though.
All right, so the question is, what is seen when in planning? When do you get the A, B, and C of the requirements?
I mean, applicants apply for a given process, and once they apply, then it goes into our database. Now they can apply for a preliminary ARB, if that's highly recommended, or they can go straight to the major ARB, which is, if they're wanting to build a new office building or a new multifamily, something of that nature. If they're wanting to do a planned community or a PHZ, that goes above and beyond our code, then they need to speak to council first. And that's the pre-screening process, where they talk to council first and get an understanding from council on if they think that proposal is appropriate or not. And after the pre-screening comes, could be a prelim ARB, could be a major ARB. It's a rezoning, there's many other things that come after that pre-screening.
So if we get the text of the pre-screening from council, we could go on this site and find drawings that are sufficient enough for us to get a sense of what the project is going to be.
So I'm still sharing my screen. If you bear with me for a second, I will find one of those. Why is it not showing? Okay. So this is our pending projects webpage. And that's what I have in the city official report. I have a bit.ly, short link that will get you to this page. And then on the pending projects page, it's just, alphabetical order.
Mm-hmm.
Open these up, find the address that you're interested in. I mean, we had 250 Cambridge this morning. So if I go on that specific webpage, you'll see some photos. And then you'll see the plan sets and anything else. So we have projects that go to a public hearing, all have these types of web pages. And you also have the other link that I have in the city official report is the bit.ly link to Building Eye. So if for some crazy reason we didn't do a web page, everything is available on Building Eye.
Okay. So it's up to us then to move ahead on that, huh? To figure out how which project we want to say bring up at a board meeting and have a discussion about, or have one smaller committee looking at one or another of the projects and then coming with a report.
I think, as board members get their packets and they're reading through them, and if they see an interesting project, on this list of pending projects, then certainly, dig in, do some early research. If you have some concerns about a given project, you could definitely email staff with those concerns. It may be, I do need to talk to the attorneys a little bit to make sure exactly how we can do this and, not cause a Brown Act violation or something of that nature. Because we do want to make sure that the board is not coming to a conclusion before they've heard all the evidence. But you can certainly be asking questions early and things of that nature.
Yeah, I just want to jump in here really quick and express two concerns that I have with some of this. One is that it will extend the process for the applicant. Now, if they request to have some sort of pre-hearing or pre-meeting, great. But to extend this process in an unofficial way is a little concerning for me. Because if they schedule an unofficial hearing and then they can't get their next hearing until a month and a half later or whatever, we all know how the schedule gets full. We all know how this process can drag along. So concern number one, I do not want to make this process any longer for the applicant. Number two is I'm actually very concerned that we might end up with some prejudgment to the point where if we've seen enough of this project and we've dug in without ever having heard from the applicant, without ever having the formal presentation, we might be coming into these hearings with somewhat of a bias already to either approve or deny. And that has me very concerned as well. So I just need to put that on the record that I have some serious concerns about this for those two specific reasons. Thank you.
I think those are reasonable, very reasonable concerns, both of them. On the other hand, there's a sort of another aspect to looking at projects. Because by the time it comes into us, if it's a full project, they've spent a huge amount of time to put together a huge packet. It involves things which at that point, you're certainly not going to question it at all. And we end up, to be honest with you, we end up talking about materiality without talking about initial concepts and important aspects of projects, very important aspects. So in a sense, you could look back at projects that we've already reviewed just recently, Bayshore in particular, and we talked a lot in our meeting about materiality. And in the end, the council decided that this project should proceed. And we never really talked about the other issues that are serious enough about that project. And that's what sort of sticks with me, is that there's some major planning concerns, site issues and whatnot that really we should have addressed. The heat island effect, there's no trees that cause shadow on the grounds. In other projects, we get very involved in making sure that there are proper trees to cause shadows to fall on parking areas where, that never comes up, never come up. It may not be a part of planned communities as a design issue, but it's very serious stuff. And it's something that we could comment on as architects, as professionals. We need to look at these kind of elements of a project. Maybe it's something that then gets suggested to planning to look at their regulations in regards to those aspects of the zoning that may need to be adjusted in some way. But if we don't put those comments out there, there's no basis for any change to occur. And we are talking only about materiality. And I don't think it's very big and important to just focus on that one aspect. So if we could find a way, and I think it starts with this list, to review projects and talk about generalities and ask Jody to say, where is this in the zoning? Ask her to help us out.
Yeah, in that vein, David, I sincerely appreciate your points there. It definitely provides quite a bit of clarification. in that regard, I guess the question is like, this list is pretty much every project that's in the pipeline. Is that correct, Jody?
No.
Okay. So this is the short list.
My team has approximately 200 projects that they're working on at any given time.
Okay.
This is the shorter list of things that will come before the ARB.
Okay. So I guess the question that where I'm trying to get to here is on David's comment, like I'd be very sort of distressed if we ended up reviewing some of these like Stanford Shopping Center projects, which are smaller. There's it's sort of a planned thing. So I guess the question is, how closely does this list reflect the concept that these larger planned developments where we do need more time and effort to consider trees, heat island effects, circulation, trash pickup, all of these sort of extra above and beyond materiality and sort of facade changes, is this list indicative of those types of projects, or is this covering a broader spectrum?
These are things that, these are all things that will come before the ARB at some time. There are some, shopping center facades may show up in here because we've reviewed backcountry, because that's a larger facade that comes before the ARB. But you can, choose to skip over that and not do a whole bunch of pre-work. So
Okay.
it's just a list of projects that you'll see in the future.
Yes, well, I definitely think, I myself have picked some of the larger housing projects that ought to be looked at this way. I think that San Antonio Road area is going to be a major issue because the council has asked for greater density there. So there are significant zoning issues that are going to have to be addressed that may even sort of explode some of the objective rulings that are out there right now, because they're taller buildings, they're going to have to be taller buildings. I think we just have to have somewhat of a broader look at the city because we're responsible in some way for this, And Peter and I feel pretty strongly about it, that these are significant. I can't put the.
Let me bring it back to what the real question right now is. We're reviewing an action item to approve changes to our bylaws. And my suggestion is and remains that we consider including this list staff is preparing as a bylaw item, that staff shall prepare this list and this is what it shall include, or this is how it gets put together. And I think we really can only do that with a real strong support of the board. It's something staff isn't going to want to do. It's a lot of work and it's memorialized that way. I mean, Jody's very happy to do it, sure, but putting it in the bylaws is more serious. And the city attorney may well give us grief too. Is that within our purview? I believe it is, but more than that, I believe the board as a whole should make that decision. And so that's the question right now. Do we want to try to get this in the bylaws?
Okay, can I jump in here, Peter? Sincerely appreciate that. At this point, I mean, we're still sort of modifying how this list is presented. Even just today, the comment that we want to see a little bit more. So my comment on this front is, while yes, I agree that it should be put in the bylaws, should it be put in the bylaws today? Or does that sort of set in stone exactly how this thing is formatted versus if we delay our decision on putting it in the bylaws by just a month or two so that we have a little bit more time to work out the formatting to see what works best and then put it in. And I don't know if that's actually an issue or not, if that's so maybe Jody can jump in.
I would hope that the bylaws would be a little more generic. And so we wouldn't go into that level of detail.
Yes, I think it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
And
so if I may, I think we've got, 5 different items that we're sort of talking about today. Related to term limits, I don't think we need any discussion. I think the municipal code's been cleaned up, so we're good. Related to the timing of chair and vice chair elections, I would appreciate a straw poll on that. So far, I'm hearing that maybe doing that at the first meeting of all new board members, which would be early April, seems to be the consensus so far. So maybe if I can get a raise of hands that We all agree?
Agreed.
Okay, we all four present agree with elections in early April. Related to the annual report and the council's work plan, staff is suggesting that we combine those. Basically, the look back and the look forward, that we would combine those. I heard general agreement on that. Maybe we can get a raise of hands.
Agreed.
All four agree. Thank you. The next item was adding, we do have a pre-meeting with the chair and the vice chair. I understand what Board Member Balte, Vice Chair Balte is saying about just not wanting to be caught off guard, that's some secret meeting. And so staff would be happy to add that type of thing to the bylaws if we all agree. Okay, all four agree.
One for a moment. Does that include a description of what is discussed at those meetings in some way?
I will work with the attorney's office to come up with some generic language about what's discussed, yes.
Okay.
And then the last item was this list of pending projects. I think, at the list that we've currently shown you, I would be happy to put something to that effect into the bylaws. So again, we know that it continues into the future. I think we would leave it very generic, that it's just literally a list of pending projects. All agree?
All agree.
Agreed.
Okay, four agree. Thank you so much. I'll let you take it back, Chair, if you need to.
I didn't hear you, Jody, mention, maybe I don't have support for this, but I would like the annual plan to be the effort to get it done spearheaded by the chair, and I'd like to have that put in the bylaws. This clearly said the chairperson shall.
All agree?
Agreed.
All of four agree with the chair being taking responsibility. I appreciate that.
Comment on that was, I remember Wynn Firth actually sort of scratching her head and saying, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And she was sitting in planning department, sort of working on the whole thing. And
Yeah, I remember her leaving town and running out of Dodge and leaving it with me.
Yes, but I think you definitely, the whole board, throws in their 2 cents and the chair just, summarizes. So I think as Vice Chair Balte was saying, it's just for the chair to kind of push it forward.
okay,
So I can move, David, that we continue this item as discussed.
for the next meeting.
Yeah. So not-
Do we want to have this? I don't know if I'll have bylaws by the very next hearing. Maybe we continue to a date uncertain.
Continued to a
Okay.
date uncertain.
Date uncertain. Yeah.
So you need a second and a vote then.
Can I
So
have a motion?
I move that we continue item number 3 to a date uncertain.
Vice Chair Balte.
Somebody.
Second.
I'll second.
Do it again.
Okay, Vice Chair Balte,
Yes.
Board Member Chen,
Yes.
Chair Hirsch,
Yes.
Board Member Rosenberg,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Minutes.
So now we have some minutes.
Yeah, so this is the July 21st minutes. We had continued this because there was an ad hoc meeting and we wanted to make sure and get those sort of minutes included as well.
So I appreciate them adding the minutes. If there's no comments, I'll move to approve them as submitted.
I would second that.
We vote.
Vice Chair Balte,
Yes.
Board Member Chen,
Yes.
Chair Hirsch,
Yes.
Board Member Rosenberg,
Yes.
motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, Jody, for putting those in there.
So,
Does that conclude everything other than the ad hoc committee today?
Board member. Yeah.
So I have one very quick
You have an
comment.
announcement. David, are you on to board member questions, comments, and announcements now?
Okay. Okay. Do we have any comments?
I have one very briefly, just on the note of the Architectural Review Board Design Awards. I would ask my
good.
fellow board members, we seem to have received all boards, all digital items, with maybe the exception of one digital item that we're waiting on, but I think we have mostly everything. And I would ask respectfully, when you have time, to please compose your small write-up in regard to the presentation that you'll be giving to introduce your project. So it's small, short. I will be sending out an email to Jody, who I think will disperse it amongst everyone, so I don't have to email everyone directly. And that we do have links to all of the items. So if you want to just review yours and touch base, and if there is anything that you have questions or concerns about, let us know.
Are we supposed to get any description from the design team?
Yes, so there should be a description provided by the design team, and you can sort of piggyback off of what they wrote, just provide a sort of introduction to them and a sort of a very brief overview before they get their chance to say anything.
Okay.
Is it coming, or is there a deadline when we can get those?
The deadline is approaching, or I think we have everything already.
Yeah, I mean, I think for board members' introductions, the deadline is when you give it.
Yeah, so the boards from sorry, I'm thinking of the physical boards from the architects, those are all in, their write-ups should be in. And the deadline for you guys on this write-up should just be next week or so that we can sort of process through them and just make sure everything's ready to go.
And I think for the introduction, we just want to make sure you're explaining why, the board gave this particular item an award, just sort of the generalities of that.
Peter, do you want to talk about the parklets?
No, I don't think I have an announcement to make about that, David. So, no, I think I think I'm done. Unless you want to bring something up, I guess, but
No, just, you had some concerns about it.
no, I have nothing prepared to say right now.
That sort of does it for the day. There's an ad hoc meeting.
These folks are waiting for us.
Okay. Sorry. So let's have a adjournment.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Okay.
All right, thank you all. We will continue on with the ad hoc committee. Do we have, believe we have the applicant for the ad hoc committee is here in chambers. And then I know we have Tamara Harrison is the planner for this project. I'll give her a second to turn on her camera.
So
Let's
And
take a
we'll
5-minute
give
break.
everyone a
Remind us
minute
that.
to
it's very different.
get situated.
Thanks. Good to see you. Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Do we sit down? Camera's on by Zoom. This is so formal, but yes. Whatever Jody thinks works best. I don't want to. So can we get the staff report on this? We're going to be back in session. This is the ad hoc committee meeting for the Architecture Review Board, and we're reviewing the project at 180 Stanford. It's the, Jody, what's the name of this project again, please? Tamara, please announce what your project is as well. Thank you.
Yes, it's building EE modification at the Stanford Shopping Center. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So again, the building EE modification at the Stanford Shopping Center located at 180 El Camino Real. Building EE will be a new building at the Stanford Shopping Center. Currently it's building J, which is going to be demolished as a part of this project. So this project was previously discussed at the July 7th ARB, and the following items were directed to go to an ad hoc committee, including revised bicycle parking locations, further review of the trees identified for removal, and then also the transformer location within the parking area. In addition, staff asked the applicant to prepare a circulation exhibit just to clearly show that all 8-foot clearances were being met around the project area. So this illustration here shows the previous layout of the bike parking locations as well as the applicant's preferred location. They would prefer to keep them here in the red highlighted area. The ARB had some concerns. That was like a high circulation area near crosswalks, the sidewalk, and the entry to the pedestrian paseo. This illustration here will show you the applicant's alternative location for the bike racks. So the alternative is to locate the bike racks directly up against building C, which is just across the paseo from the proposed building EE. As far as tree removal, the previous proposal was going to remove trees 282 through 285. And as a part of the update with rerouting of utilities, the applicant is going to be able to preserve tree 282, which was of primary concern for the ARB, but trees 283 through 285 will still be removed as part of the construction. As far as the transformer location, the previous layout showed the transformer located in a planter box just across shopping center away from building EE. And there was going to be one parking stall that was going to be lost as a result of this. And the ARB had some concerns about that location, like from an aesthetic standpoint. They were concerned about screening and that sort of thing. So the applicant has updated. They've been working with the utility company, city utilities, and apparently we're going to expand the transformer for the Wilkes-Bashford site. So the transformer location that was previously located in the planter here will go away. This will return to landscaping, and the transformer for Wilkes-Bashford will be slightly enlarged, and it would serve both buildings. And then as far as the circulation plan goes, again, this just shows the additional dimensions that the applicant has added to the plan, just to be clear, showing that 8 feet is being 8 feet or exceeds 8 feet in all circulation areas. The ARB did have some comment about possibly chamfering this corner of this patio, although that was not included in the previous motion. So again, that did not change, but the 8 feet clearance is being met in all areas. With that, staff recommends that the Architectural Review Board take the following action and discuss and provide direction on the changes, confirm the revised project meets the full ARB's direction, and recommend the director approve the project. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamara. Ying-Chi, should we hear from the applicant what they've done to meet these things, or is it all clear to you? I think we can. Do you guys have some sort of presentation or discussion, or can you just take us through the 5 points? What did you do to?
Sure. I mean, Mike can bring up the plans that Tamara went over, but as you can see, we looked at each of them and we've addressed them in detail. So I think if you have that.
So, Ying-Chi, we can, if we look at in our agenda, it's got 5 items here that we had to address. So I'd like to come back to number 1, the bicycles last, if that's okay with you. Because I'm okay with the other 4 items. I feel they've met that requirement and I don't see need for more discussion. If you're in agreement with that, then we're done with that. Okay. Tamara, I would like to clarify with you that it was not part of the ARB's motion to ask them to chamfer the corners or consider chamfering the corners of the outdoor dining areas. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I don't think it's fair of us to go back to that issue. So then for me, my issue is still with the bicycle parking location. What I'd like to do is have you pull up as large scale as possible a diagram of that so we can really understand. Ying-Chi, I went out there yesterday again, and I really feel that the proposed place for the bicycles is sort of in the way of the pathway. And I don't think it should be in that location. So I'm in favor of them moving them over where they're proposing as the alternate location. But what do you think? Yeah, along the side of the building. Yeah. So is there a reason you guys are pushing the other alternative, or what are we missing here?
No, we're fine with either applicant. either location, moving them behind will slide the landscaping a little bit to create the area for the bikes. All the other bikes along that facade are out there. And I know there's a lot of discussion about people wanting the bikes at the point of entries and visibility, but they're both valid locations, and I don't think
Well, I prefer to see them in your optional location along the side of building C. You're okay with that too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just leave that. That's what we're asking you to do.
we don't have any problem with that.
Okay, so then I think that concludes our ad hoc meeting, right? We've given them, everything's done. Yeah, Tamara, we're all set?
Yes,
So
got it.
we're approving the items 2 through 5 as presented. We're asking them to move the bicycles to their alternate location.
Understood.
Okay, so then we're done with the formal part of the hearing. I always like to ask you guys at an ad hoc meeting, how did we do? How was the process for you? Going through the ARB process? This is totally off the record, informal. Well, not off the record, obviously, but informal. I'd just like to know, did we take too long? Were we unreasonable? Did it seem disjointed? Did it seem professional? If you don't have to say anything if you don't want to either.
I would say that the process, we're familiar with the process as we've been going through this whole Macy's Men's redevelopment for the past few years. I think that there may be a little bit of a backlog here at the city, and we've been suffering through some of that. We had hoped to bring this back in, I believe, in
Spring.
June, maybe even in April, and we were pushed due to some other projects that either took a front seat. We were kind of sequenced in. We later learned that some of our other mall projects took a precedent over this one. And we worked with Jody and the team to try to prioritize things. This is a greater importance project for us. So we kind of worked to manipulate the system and the order of presentation to get in front of the board. And we're happy that we got an opportunity. As much as we would have liked to have had it happen a little earlier, it is what it is. And we're just happy to gain approval here today and to proceed making the improvements out at the shopping center.
Great, thanks. That's good feedback. Anything else you guys want to chime in on? Just, we're trying to get it better. You got Jody sitting here, so she has to hear what you say.
I think I'll offer specific to this project. And again, I'm the engineer, not the architect, but I do know the team very much try to incorporate comments received from the current ARB board, as well as previous comments in the building EE architecture, including the site improvements, specific in this case to the Paseo, that connectivity throughout the site, and adding that experience to this area. And then also to Brett's point about the multiple phases of this area of the center, I think asking the team to go back and look at the transformer location, and while the projects were treated and approved separately for the Wilkes-Bashford transformer, and then what would ultimately be the connection for this building, looking at how they could be combined, which ended up as the one location, and then landscaping the second, became an alternative that was incorporated.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I came in to Simon in January, so I got to bypass all the previous 3 years. So ever since I've been here, it's been smooth, and you guys have been great.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned.